Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is Prawn News. And we're kicking off with the news that EA is claiming that it has stopped over 300,000 cheaters from playing the Battlefield 6 open beta. And this is an interesting claim, and obviously probably has increased since the beta started in, because it's been over 2 weekends and is now on at the moment at the time of recording. What I find most interesting for this, though, is the number of people that have probably been stopped from playing because of the secure boot requirement. So last weekend I made a video on how to activate secure boot in your system and all the steps that you might need to do it. In theory, it's quite easy. My son had a problem where he couldn't play Battlefield 6. All I did was went into the BIOS and turned secure boot on, and then it worked. But you also need TPM 2.0 to be on. You also need Windows to be set in a certain way and installed in a certain way. You also need your BIOS to be set to UEFI instead of legacy mode, various other requirements. All of those things mean that loads of people are watching that video. I've had 30,000 people watch that video, and loads of them are complaining that it still doesn't work, even though their system says secure boot's on. So some people just can't play the game. Never mind whether they're cheating or not. They literally can't play. Obviously, if they are cheating, good. Good that they can't play. But if they're just a normal person with aging hardware playing on a system that's a few years old and maybe doesn't meet those requirements, sucks for them. They're going to have to upgrade their entire computer, apparently, just to play Battlefield 6. Obviously, there's also some complexity to it, though. So the less tech-savvy people now can't play and will either just not be able to play or have to turn to console or just be frustrated with it, which is kind of rubbish. So it's a bit of a rubbish workaround, really, and it's not the best fix. It's not going to be the only thing that will stop cheaters, because there's already proof that cheaters are using it. There's been quite a few videos surfacing of cheaters playing and of footage of cheats happening within the open beta, which is nuts. What is wrong with people that they're cheating in a free open beta of a game that's not even out yet? Crazy to me. But apparently it's stopping a lot of real cheaters, so that's good, because cheaters are a plague on the gaming community. More tariff news. Trump keeps making the world worse by apparently introducing a tariff that will likely have 100% impact on computer chips made outside the US and have negative impact on a lot of companies worldwide and the price for the end consumer, because let's face it, the end consumer pays for these tariffs, not the actual businesses. But this is interesting in a number of ways, because TSMC, for example, has set up its own foundry in the US and is actually making chips there, so shouldn't be hit by this, despite the fact, obviously, that they're an international company that has made most of their chips in a different country other than the US. And so some interesting impacts and implications of this, but it's just more continuing news about the trade wars and all the drama that Trump's causing with these tariffs. Frankly, I think fed up with hearing about them. And it is annoying because it just impacts us, meaning we're spending more money on things, especially Americans, but also everywhere else in the world. Consumers are paying more, and we're the ones that are losing out, and that's frustrating. Interesting news from Meta, which has been teasing 2 new headsets, and these are prototypes, so not only are they not ready yet, but also even if they are ready, they're going to be so expensive, it's going to be ridiculous. But what jumps out as quite interesting in this story is that one of them has such a high pixel count and such a clear display that it will require DLSS from NVIDIA and obviously a machine to be tethered to just to make sure it can be powered properly. And it uses a micro LED display panel. Now, there are 2 different VR headsets being teased here. Tiramisu and Boba 3 are the code names for these, and they give completely different experiences. But one of them apparently has a display with a brightness that goes up to 1,400 nits, which is 14 times higher than the Quest 3 and likely to burn your eyeballs. I mean, not really, but it's pretty bonkers. And it's got a lot more pixels per degree, which is apparently how they measure pixels on the displays for VR headsets. The Quest 3 has 26 on average, and this headset is meant to reach up to 90. So it would be the equivalent to having 7,000 pixel resolution and a very insane amount of pixels. But it's meant to be delivering a really realistic experience. So you look at the VR world with this headset, and it is difficult to determine the difference between that and actual reality, which is pretty nuts. However, the field of view is incredibly limited at just 33 by 33 degrees, so it's got a very small field of view, but a very clear picture, and obviously will require a bit of a beast of a machine in order to run. And then this Bobber headset, which is the other one, has an FOV of 180 degrees by 120, which is significantly bigger than the Quest 3. So these are two headsets that are pushing the envelope in a number of different ways, but it's expected that they're going to be very expensive and might not even reach mass market price, but will be more competitive or more in line with Apple's headset, for example, and might even make Apple's VR headsets look like a bargain, according to PC Gamer, so that's pretty nuts. If you've ever looked at your PC and thought, this thing doesn't have enough displays on it, and that includes if you've already got a display on your cooler and on your fans, and now you can also get a display on your NVMe. This is a Thermalright heatsink, which has an ARGB display, which gives you a readout of the speed your drive is currently running at. Now, this is actually interesting beyond having a display on top of it, because it's obviously a heatsink for the NVMe SSD, and one that is pretty hefty. It's quite a big thing if you look at the pictures. It has 4 5mm copper heat pipes and a small PWM fan, so it requires to be plugged into a PWM header. And that fan can go up to 6,500 RPM, which, based on testing I've done previously on other NVMe drives with a little fan in like that, where it goes too fast, it's very loud and very high-pitched, but obviously it will help dissipate heat and could potentially be really good for Gen 5 NVMe SSDs, which do run very hot. It is pretty cool looking. Whether you really need an active display of how fast your drive's running all the time, I don't know, but if you really like the screens inside your PC, then this might be another interesting thing that's coming. It's only available to buy on AliExpress at the moment for around $32 US, but Tom's Hardware suggests that it might come to Amazon at some point in the future. LG's revealed the world's fastest OLED monitor, which goes up to 720 Hertz, which is bonkers. I always think these things are crazy when you've got a really high refresh rate, because obviously you want your FPS to be close to that sort of level, and it's a real struggle even to push to 240 Hertz with a lot of games, depending on the monitor. So this one is obviously designed in two interesting ways. It's got that tandem sort of setup that LG has on its monitors, giving you the option to switch resolution to then increase your refresh rate. So at 1440p, for example, which is what it defaults as, it will give you 540 Hertz refresh rate, which obviously isn't as high. But then if you set it to 720p, that's when you can get 720 Hertz. Who's playing at 720p? That's pretty nuts. I know competitive players like to play at 1080p because then they can push the FPS higher and you can see what's going on more. If you don't mind reducing it to 720p, apparently now you can get up to 720 Hertz refresh rate, which is pretty fast. And it might work for competitive gamers, so that it might well be appealing. And obviously 0.03 millisecond response time, and it's the 4th generation of LG's OLED's display technology as well. So it should be really good, to be fair, if you want a really nice looking 1440p monitor, which can also go up to a massive refresh rate, then this might be an option. There's news here which piqued my interest because it's about Medal of Honor Airborne, which is ancient, and it was originally released back in 2007, which makes me feel old because I remember that game vividly, and it was a long time ago apparently. But a mod has been trying to breathe new life into it with the Redux mod, which has now had an update and is in version 2.03 and has loads of different improvements to it, and it actually tempts me into going and trying it because there's a long list of improvements, including improved peaking and leaning mechanics and weapon overhaul, recoil, and such things like that. And it's also been designed to make it like a hardcore tactical shooter instead of a casual Call of Duty clone. So it's an enhancement to a pretty awesome game. Sadly, Medal of Honor hasn't been around for years now, which is a shame because the Medal of Honor series was awesome, but got killed off by Call of Duty, basically. And this was one of the last World War II games that they made back then, all those years ago, Although I really liked Warfighter and the other modern day Medal of Honor game. Those were probably a long time ago as well now, but it's nice to see these new games getting given new life without obviously remakes and reboots, which we're seeing a lot of appearing over the last few years as well. Last week, I talked about the news that AMD is apparently working on the AM6 socket for its motherboard lineup, and that's coming at some point. Now we've got news that Intel's next socket, which is LGA 1954, which obviously means more pins in there versus 1851. So it's another socket change. That will be coming at some point, and it's rumored. But apparently this is going to support more generations of CPU. So it's going to support Nova Lake, Razor Lake, Titan Lake, and Hammer Lake CPUs, expected to support at least 4, which is more in line with what AMD's been doing, because Intel often changes socket every couple of years for a new motherboard setup, meaning you can't just buy a new CPU and put it in your older motherboard because you have to upgrade your motherboard as well. Whereas AMD's had the same socket for a long time, meaning people could just easily upgrade to a newer CPU. Indeed, you could wait a few years and then buy a new CPU and put it in your motherboard. Well, now it looks like Intel's trying to follow suit with AMD, which is no bad thing for consumers because it means much easier upgrade without having to strip out your entire PC and build it again or replace your motherboard, which adds to some complications because you have to buy a new Windows license and other things. So this is pretty good. It's good to see. Hopefully it's true. It's just a rumor at this point, but we'll have to wait and see. Another bit that's pretty true is car news, is that Ford has revealed a new process that is making this universal EV platform. Basically, it's streamlining the way it's building EVs and reducing the price. So they've revealed this mid-sized pickup truck in the US for $30,000, which actually equates to something like £23,000 sterling, which is an amazing price for an electric vehicle because they're usually really expensive and not that accessible unless you want something pretty naff. But even then, they're still not easy to get hold of. Ford's also done a few interesting things with its universal vehicle platform, which includes using 20% fewer parts, 25% fewer fasteners, 40% fewer workstations, and it's improved the assembly time, making it 15% better, and so it's quicker at building it and it's easier to build, meaning they can churn out more and reduce the costs. And also because it's a universal platform means that these cells and the design of it can be used in more vehicles, so more can be produced. Ford's calling it its Model T moment. I think it's pretty interesting and promising for the future of EVs, especially if they keep that cost down. Then obviously competition's going to have to reduce their cost in order to keep in line, and that make EVs accessible to more people, which I think is no bad thing. More game news. Tactical shooter Ready or Not is getting a VR mod. Now, Ready or Not is a great game. I've been playing it on PC for a while. Love that game. It's hard. It's great fun with friends. It's pretty cool. Recently came onto console. There was some controversy about that because they had to do some patching to basically make it more accessible or something. I don't really follow the news on that, but they took some content out of the game so that it could be launched on console. Don't really know why. But apparently there's now going to be a VR option for this so that you'll be able to play it on PC with VR, which is nuts. It'd be pretty bonkers to play that game on PC in VR mode. I haven't played VR for a while, but I can imagine playing Ready or Not like that because it is pretty intense and crazy and just mad things happen all the time in that game. It could be quite interesting to see that happening, and I'd check out the links in the description to the full stories to find out more, including where to get access to these mods or to find out more about them if you're interested. In the UK, we got bad news in the tech space because eBuyer has been bought out of administration. So eBuyer went bust, then got bought out of administration by the Fraser Group, which has now just populated it with iPhone cases and nonsense. So eBuyer was one of the largest e-retailers for tech stuff, computer hardware and things like that in the UK for quite some time, a well-known name, and alongside Dabs and Overclocker and Novatech, and now it's just gone. And it happened really quickly as well. It didn't seem like there was much news about it having trouble, and then suddenly it just disappeared and now has been brought back to life, but in a definitely not a good way. I don't think there's going to be much competition for overclockers anymore, and Scan so not much of an issue for them, but a weird one. Coolermaster has revealed the Masterframe 500 mesh. Now, I thought this was particularly interesting. It's not the nicest looking case, as you can see from the images, although that's a personal thing, isn't it? Some people might like this sort of more stealthy case. But what jumped out to me was that it comes with two 200mm fans on the front, as well as a rear 120mm fan. And if you want to, you can put two more 200mm fans on the top. You can top mount 200mm fans in there as well. So obviously if you're using an air tower CPU cooler, you've got two intake fans on the front, two exhausts on the top, or maybe even just loads of massive intake fans. 200mm fans are quieter in my experience. So you've got really big fans like that, they can spin quieter because they can push more air, and so you don't need them to go as fast, so it ends up being a quiet case. It's not exactly compact, as you get an idea of from that. The picture for it makes it look like it will fit nicely on the desk, but it's not a small one because it will fit up to an E80X motherboard or an XL80X motherboard, and also ATX power supplies and more. And so it's pretty hefty and should be able to fit things nicely into it, and yet packs in those massive fans. It was pretty awesome. The headline for this story was a bit deceptive because it says it comes with 4 200mm fans, but apparently there's only 2, and then the option to add in extra. But it's unusual to get such large fans included in your case as standard. Another thing that's unusual is 3D printing a full-sized kayak. So this guy over on Hackaday has shown off as being printing kayaks, and he's done it once before, and he's got this 3D printer which uses a treadmill involved in that. So it's not like your average 3D printer, so not everyone's going to be able to just take the idea and churn out kayaks. But as someone that enjoys a bit of kayaking, I thought this was pretty interesting and pretty mammoth print. But he's been doing it successfully within a day, so that's pretty crazy. I love seeing weird and wonderful 3D printings. So that's it for Prawn News this week. Check out the links in the description to the full stories and let me know what you're excited for. And are you playing Battlefield 6 over the beta? And if you are, is Secure Boot a problem? If it is, maybe have a look at my video and see if it helps. Thanks for watching.